Hello, and welcome to the National Press Theatre. Before we begin today's press conference, I have a few important preventative measures that I need to read out. To prevent disruptive and potentially harmful audio feedback incidents that can cause injuries, we remind all in-person participants to keep their earpieces away from the microphones at all times. When you're not using your earpiece, please feel free to place it face down on the middle of the sticker for this purpose that you'll find on the table. Please consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent audio feedback incidents. These measures are in place so that we can protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters, and conduct our business without interruption. Thank you all for your cooperation. Without further ado, I'd like to give a welcome to our speakers here today. So we have Philippe Dufresne, the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, Naomi Ayotte, Acting Vice President and Commissioner of the Oversight Division from Quebec, Michael Harvey, Information and Privacy Commissioner for British Columbia, and Diane McLeod, Information and Privacy Commissioner of Alberta. And Mr. Dufresne, please take it away.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à toutes et tous. Merci de vous joindre à nous. Je suis très heureux d'être ici avec mes collègues du Québec, de la Colombie-Britannique et de l'Alberta pour présenter les conclusions de notre enquête conjointe. TikTok is one of the most popular social media applications in Canada and the one that is most used by Canadian children and teens. TikTok collects vast amounts of personal information about its users, including children. This data is being used to target the content and ads that users see, which can have harmful impacts, particularly on youth. Despite the fact that the application uses the information that it collects, including biometric information, to estimate users' age for its own business purposes, our investigation found that the measures that TikTok had in place to keep children off the popular video sharing platform and to prevent the collection and use of their sensitive personal information for profiling and content targeting purposes were inadequate. Les pratiques de marketing en ligne et le ciblage de contenu ont des répercussions importantes sur le bien-être des enfants. Les jeunes sont souvent moins conscients des risques d'atteinte à la vie privée et sont plus sensibles aux techniques utilisées pour capter leur attention, les inciter à divulguer certains renseignements ou adopter certains comportements d'achat. Cette enquête a également permis de découvrir la mesure dans laquelle les renseignements personnels sont recueillis, utilisés, souvent sans que les utilisateurs le sachent ou y aient consenti. We found that TikTok must do more to keep underage children off its platform. We also found that it must better explain its data practices, especially to youth, so that they can meaningfully assess and consent to TikTok's collection and use of their personal information. In response to the findings and recommendations, TikTok has agreed to enhance age assurance methods to keep underage users off TikTok. It has also agreed to strengthen privacy communications to ensure that users, and in particular younger users, understand how their data could be used. This investigation underscores important considerations for any organization subject to Canadian privacy laws that designs and develops services, particularly those that may be popular with younger users. As technology plays an increasingly central role in the lives of young people in Canada, we must put their best interest at the forefront so that they are enabled to safely navigate the digital world. We know that data is used to fuel innovation and generate revenue. Innovation and revenue must also be used to protect data, especially when it comes to children. À titre de commissaire à la protection de la vie privée du Canada, je fais de la défense du droit de la vie privée des enfants une priorité stratégique. L'objectif ultime de notre enquête était de créer un environnement en ligne plus sécuritaire et plus transparent pour les enfants, où ils se sentent habilités à exercer leur droit à la vie privée et où ils peuvent explorer, apprendre et s'épanouir en toute sécurité sans compromettre leur vie privée ou leur sécurité. J'inviterai maintenant mes collègues à poursuivre la discussion sur nos conclusions. Et je donne la parole à Maître Naomi Ayotte, vice-présidente par intérim et commissaire à la section de surveillance, Commission d'accès à l'information du Québec. Merci. Thank you.
Ms. Ayotte, I think you are muted if you are trying to speak with us.
Merci, commissaire Dufresne. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. J'aimerais d'abord saluer la collaboration entre les homologues du fédéral, de l'Alberta, de la Colombie-Britannique et la Commission dans le cadre de l'enquête conjointe concernant l'entreprise TikTok. Le rapport que nous rendons public aujourd'hui est une mine d'informations et permettra aux parents d'enfants mineurs et aux jeunes d'être mieux informés des multiples collectes et utilisations de renseignements personnels faites par les plateformes numériques ainsi que de certains risques auxquels les jeunes qui les utilisent sont exposés. Les jeunes peuvent et veulent protéger leurs renseignements personnels. Pour y arriver, il faut nous assurer que des moyens et des explications adaptés à leur âge leur soient fournis. La Commission est d'avis que les efforts de protection des jeunes doivent incomber principalement aux entreprises qui conçoivent les produits et services numériques. Ces entreprises sont responsables de l'émergence de ces risques. La considération pour la vie privée doit être à l'avant-plan des priorités de ces entreprises, cela afin de favoriser un environnement numérique sécuritaire pour les mineurs. C'est dans cet esprit que certaines des recommandations contenues au rapport ont été formulées. Il appartient à l'entreprise TikTok de prendre les mesures nécessaires pour se conformer à la loi et répondre aux importants enjeux soulevés. Rappelons qu'au Québec, 17 des enfants de 6 à 12 ans ont un compte sur la plateforme TikTok. Ces chiffres sont extrêmement préoccupants. La présence d'enfants sur la plateforme TikTok, alors qu'ils ne doivent d'aucune façon s'y retrouver, est la principale préoccupation soulevée dans le cadre de l'enquête conjointe. En réponse à cette préoccupation majeure, TikTok a proposé 3 mesures pouvant permettre de limiter en grande partie la présence des enfants de moins de 14 ans sur sa plateforme. Mettre en œuvre un modèle de base de détection des utilisateurs n'ayant pas l'âge minimum requis, ajouter un modèle de traitement du langage naturel qui analysera le texte publié par les utilisateurs et mettre en œuvre un nouveau modèle de détection des utilisateurs passifs n'ayant pas l'âge minimum requis. Le rapport rendu public aujourd'hui permet également de constater que l'entreprise s'est engagée à apporter d'importantes améliorations à ses communications en matière de protection des renseignements personnels, en particulier celles adressées aux jeunes de 14 à 17 ans. L'entreprise s'est aussi engagée à mettre en œuvre un nouveau mécanisme de vérification des paramètres de confidentialité pour tous les comptes au Canada, y compris ceux du Québec. Ce mécanisme regrouperait les paramètres les plus importants et les plus tangibles de TikTok et permettrait aux utilisateurs d'examiner, de modifier et de confirmer plus facilement leurs paramètres. Pour la Commission, les engagements qu'a pris l'entreprise dans le cadre de l'enquête tentent à démontrer qu'il est tout à fait possible pour les entreprises qui tirent profit de l'utilisation des renseignements personnels des mineurs de poser immédiatement des gestes concrets pour mettre la protection de leur vie privée au centre de leurs pratiques et de leur développement technologique. Les attentes de la Commission à cet égard demeureront donc élevées. Au cours des prochains mois, la Commission et ses homologues du fédéral, de l'Alberta et de la Colombie-Britannique suivront attentivement les travaux de l'entreprise TikTok en lien avec les engagements pris. La Commission veillera à ce que ces derniers soient respectés et concernant les mesures visant à limiter la présence des enfants de moins de 14 ans sur sa plateforme, évaluera si elles ont les effets attendus. Une fois ce processus terminé, la Commission décidera si l'entreprise TikTok s'est conformée aux recommandations contenues au rapport. Je désire rappeler en terminant que les actions de la Commission sont et demeureront guidées par l'intérêt supérieur des jeunes. Je cède maintenant la parole à mon collègue de la Colombie-Britannique, Commissioner Michael Harvey.
Thank you, Diane McLeod. And good morning, everyone. The report that we're publishing today sharpens what has already been a strong focus of my office on children's privacy, specifically what has become the unacceptable status quo when it comes to young people and their privacy rights and safety on digital platforms like TikTok. In British Columbia, my office's strategic plan over the next 3 years will focus heavily on children's privacy rights in digital spaces. This report highlights the situation we're dealing with and why it is a priority for us. Every minute of every day, a child in Canada is removed from TikTok because they are under 13 years of age. That's 500,000 accounts banned every year belonging to children who should never have been on the platform, children whose personal information has been collected and used in ways they could not have meaningfully consented to and without a reasonable or legitimate purpose. This flies in the face of the key principles that underpin our privacy laws. Children and youth shouldn't be expected to understand, let alone consent to, TikTok's complex and layered data collection and use practices. These range from obvious collections like videos and browsing habits to biometric data captured through machine learning. But this is the situation we find ourselves in now, playing catch-up instead of prevention, trying to fix problems that never should have occurred in the first place, and putting the burden on parents and children to do their best to navigate systems designed without age-appropriate privacy safeguards. We are pleased that TikTok is committed to making some important privacy enhancements to their platform, including modern age assurance mechanisms and improved age-appropriate communications around privacy. The trends identified in this report go beyond just TikTok and reflect what has become the industry standard for many platforms targeting young people. This is simply unacceptable. The problem does not lie with innovation. The solution does. We need companies to innovate and find new ways to build privacy into the technologies from the earliest stages. In this way, enhancing privacy through innovation can become an economic opportunity for businesses in this new era. Together, we can ensure that young people can take their place in the digital spaces that are so much a part of their lives without having to sacrifice their privacy or well-being. And now I will turn things over to my colleague, Commissioner Diane McLeod of Alberta.
I'd like to thank my colleagues for their comments today and for the collaborative work that our offices have done over the past 2.5 years on this complex and important investigation. The investigation focused on what TikTok has done and not done to ensure that children do not use its platform. Although TikTok's terms of use prohibit users under the age of 13, 14 in Quebec, we found that the measures TikTok has implemented to keep children off its platform were not working, or at least not working well enough. This resulted in the collection of the sensitive information of many children and the use of that information for purposes of ad targeting and content recommendations. What this means is that children on TikTok are being exposed to a wide spectrum of risks and harms that include, but go beyond issues of privacy. I can give you some examples. Children on TikTok are likely to see video content that is not age appropriate. Children on TikTok are likely to receive targeted ads that normalize gambling. This is a concern raised by clinicians specializing in minor care. These targeted ads can also increase identity theft, hinder healthy development, foster negative body images, or early sexualization, or reinforce gender stereotypes. Taking a moment to think about these possible impacts helps us to understand in a very real way why this investigation is so important and why the next steps taken are so important. Before I get to that, I want to give you some background about the work my office has been doing to protect the privacy rights of children. This issue has been front and center for us and for information and privacy offices across the country. During our 2024 annual meeting of commissioners, we passed a resolution calling for action on the growing use of deceptive design patterns on websites and mobile apps. We highlighted that deceptive design patterns influence, manipulate, and coerce users to make decisions that are not in their best interests. This is particularly problematic for children who are more easily influenced than adults. At our 2023 annual meeting, one of our resolutions called on governments to legislate to ensure strong safeguards, transparency requirements, and access to remedies for young people. We also called on government institutions to make sure their practices prioritize a secure, ethical, and transparent digital environment for youth. For the past 3 years, one of the priority goals for my office is to enhance privacy protections for children. And as part of our review of Alberta's Personal Information Protection Act and our comments during the development of new public sector privacy laws here in Alberta, my office has consistently recommended specific protection for the personal information of children. All of that to demonstrate how important this issue is for all of us. Today's report notes that TikTok has already implemented a number of measures to deal with this issue and has committed to additional measures. We are encouraged by the steps taken and the commitments made, but we will continue to monitor the situation and work with TikTok to ensure the final resolution of this matter through implementation of the agreed upon recommendations. We look forward to receiving TikTok's monthly updates to outline the progress they've made on their commitments. And with that, this concludes our opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we'll now turn to a question and answer period. We'll give priority to journalists in the room first. So one question, one follow-up. Anya Caradeglia from the Canadian Press.
Are you satisfied with TikTok's response and the measures that they've pledged to address your concerns?
We found the investigation to be well-founded and conditionally resolved. So that means that we're pleased with the undertakings that TikTok has taken to meet our recommendations. They've agreed to provide age verification in a way that's proportionate, that's effective, to block underage users from the site. And they've agreed to significantly improve the communications that they make to Canadians, including Canadian youth. And so, as indicated by my colleagues, we're going to monitor the situation. There's some steps that they still have to take, and we've provided timelines for that. For the moment, we find that it's conditionally resolved, and so this is a positive step, but we will monitor it to make sure that all of the undertakings are met.
And can you put this into context? What you found with TikTok, how unusual is that compared to other large social media platforms? You know, is this much more egregious than you might find on, I don't know, other popular social media platforms?
Right. Well, you know, the two issues in terms of preventing access to children on inappropriate sites is an issue that is gathering worldwide attention. So it's being looked at here in Canada. It's being looked at internationally. We've issued international declarations on this. So it is a growing challenge. It's not limited to this organization. And that's the same for the issue of information that's provided to users about how their data is used, by whom and how and so on. We're seeing that more and more. And we've, in fact, my colleague, Diane McLeod, mentioned the resolution that we did as a provincial territorial community on deceptive design patterns where psychological tools are essentially used to make things more difficult to choose or others easier to choose. We've done that internationally as well. So those two themes in terms of the rigor of preventing access to children for inappropriate sites and the issue of making privacy information more user-friendly, those are worldwide issues. Those are Canadian issues. This is a strong example of areas where improvements need to be made, and good outcome in the sense that the organization TikTok has agreed to follow those recommendations.
And for those joining us online, I'll ask you to use the raise hand function if you wish to ask a question. Next, we'll go to Kat Tunney from CBC.
I guess one of the conversations that people have when we're talking about TikTok and data is clearly the ByteDance element of it all, and the fact that it's Chinese owned. I know this was looking at youth and privacy, but did your report touch on that at all, and perhaps what this data being collected on people who are not supposed to be on the app, how that's being used in this national security context that people are talking about?
Right, and I'll answer. And my colleagues are online as well, so I will invite them to speak as well if need be. But on this issue of national security, certainly we mention it in the report in the sense that we note the government's action on this, the government steps that it took with national security concerns, specifically with respect to China. That was not the focus of our investigation, which was about privacy, which was about youth. However, in the context of consent, in the context of information, we spoke of that concern about data being taken outside of Canada, being potentially accessed by other states. And so one of our specific recommendations was that the policy should make that more explicit. It should say this information can go to China and be accessed by the Chinese government. So to flag this as a matter of transparency, and this TikTok agreed to do this.
And forgive me if it's in the report, we just got it while you were starting to talk, but do you have any commitment from TikTok to delete this data that is collected on young Canadians?
Well, we are going to be monitoring the situation in terms of the age gating, in terms of the prevention measures that they take from now on. We know that they were taking about 500,000 kids off the platform, and we're going to be monitoring the situation to make sure that that's properly remedied. And with the new consent mechanisms that Canadians are better aware, including youth, about what that means and what are the implications.
And next we'll go to Laura Thompson for the logic. Hi, thanks for taking our questions. Obviously, you were focused mainly on children, but more broadly, you highlighted issues around consent. Can you just speak to what specifically is missing? What is it that users are not seeing in sort of plain language that you think that they should be?
So we found that often the information was hard to find. You had to dig deep into the website to find the privacy policies, to find information about what would be done. Sometimes there wasn't enough detail. So we'd be talking about things like product improvement or language training and so on. But we wanted more clarity about what type of data are you going to be using, the fact that it's going to be used to send targeted ads back to you, the type of information that you're going to be collecting and why, and as indicated also some of the implications in terms of the transfer. So we want this overall to be more user-friendly. There is a lot of demands, and the point was made by my colleagues, we don't want to delegate this work to citizens and to parents and to kids. Organizations are best placed. They have the tools. They have the innovation. They need to use that innovation. And often, there's too much that's delegated, too much work that's delegated for the users. So we want this work to be done up front so that it's ultimately easier for adults, for everyone, but also specifically for youth. We've asked for more youth-appropriate communications. We've asked for some testing to be done to say, does this work? Is this user-friendly? Is this a sort of one-stop shop? So there's been agreement about videos and more youth-appropriate comment.
You have some conditional agreements to move forward on some of your recommendations. What happens if they don't follow through on that? You'll be keeping an eye on it, but if they decide not to, and also I'm wondering if you have any advice for the government, given the very sensitive nature of this information, the national security concerns that have been raised outside of this report. We see a new system being proposed in the United States, for example. Do you have any words of wisdom for the federal government?
Right. Well, on the last point, certainly we've recommended and continue to recommend that in modernized privacy legislation, the notion of cross-border data transfers and sort of having some more specific legal obligations on that, perhaps verification by my office or assessments or guidelines. Right now, the obligation is a broader one in terms of ensuring reasonably similar through contracts or other means. So we're seeing this issue. Again, it's a worldwide issue, and there's a lot of work being done internationally to make sure that we're raising the bar so that states improve rule of law norms and so on and so forth. So that's certainly something that is a live issue. In the context of children, we've recommended in the previous version, C27, to have the best interest of the child recognized specifically as an interpretation guide for privacy law. So continue to feel that this is extremely important. Hope to see that in a new version. In terms of what happens if the recommendations are not followed, we're monitoring them carefully. There are tools in the legislation where federally, I can take it to court and seek an order from the court. That's what we're doing in other cases when there's a refusal to follow our recommendation. I don't want to have to do that. That's lengthy, that's expensive. So it's a positive result when the organization, like in this case, agrees to the recommendation. But it also shows what I also want to see in law reform is to have order-making powers and the ability to issue fines in appropriate cases, because all of that makes a remedy earlier and more effective.
And next,
I have a response as well to that, if I may. So thank you, Philippe. Philippe has highlighted the proposed changes in Bill C-27. And here in Alberta, in our public sector privacy law, children's privacy was recognized as highly sensitive data, which means that processing that data requires extra considerations and extra protections. So we're pleased to see that. Our Personal Information Protection Act, which is substantially similar to PIPEDA, is actually under review right now, and our committee has recommended strengthening privacy rights for children in the legislation. So we are very pleased with that here in Alberta. And that means if information of Albertans is being processed, it will have higher protections as it relates to children. And in terms of our ability to remedy non-compliance with the recommendations, like my counterparts here from the provinces, we have the ability to issue an order. And I don't know if my other colleagues want to weigh in on that one as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner McLeod. I can say that in the past, British Columbia has, after an investigation, issued an order because TikTok has agreed to take steps to comply with the recommendations. We have not issued an order at that time. But again, a lot of focus will go on the monitoring. In particular, the monitoring of the effectiveness of keeping children off the platform. This is going to be a very tricky thing to do, and TikTok is going to be innovating, as I mentioned in my remarks, about how to use technology to achieve this purpose. So we'll be carefully watching the effectiveness of that and their compliance with the other recommendations. But like in Alberta and in Quebec, we have authorities at the provincial level to issue orders to achieve compliance.
Du côté du Québec, exactement comme mes collègues viennent de le mentionner, nous avons aussi les pouvoirs d'ordonnance. Cependant, à ce stade-ci du dossier, et comme nous l'avons tous exprimé, l'entreprise TikTok a confirmé qu'elle travaillerait avec les commissariats pour rapidement mettre en œuvre les recommandations qui ont été formulées. Et encore une fois, comme mes collègues l'ont mentionné, évidemment, la Commission veillera au respect de ces engagements-là. Et on pourrait bien décider d'utiliser d'autres pouvoirs que ceux de recommandation si cela s'avérait nécessaire. Mais à ce stade-ci, on le répète, l'entreprise a confirmé qu'elle travaillerait de concert avec les commissariats pour mettre en œuvre les recommandations. Et tout comme mon collègue Michael Harvey l'a mentionné, les bureaux vont vraiment veiller à s'assurer que les mesures qui ont été proposées en lien avec le fait de limiter la présence des enfants mineurs sur la plateforme TikTok, qui sont véritablement l'effet qu'on attend. Donc, cette portion-là est très importante à comprendre.
Thank you. And next we will move to Mike Couture with CTV.
Thank you all for taking our questions. I wanted to ask a question that may be quickly answered. Over the last couple of months, you were questioned about how you may have been able to do this investigation or any type of investigation on TikTok with no Canadian operations here. Was that at all hindered at all?
This jurisdiction if we have, there's a real and substantial connection to Canada and Canadians. So in this case, significant number of Canadian users, we have jurisdiction. There were some questions raised about Canadian operations and can that make it more challenging? In terms of we have powers in the legislation to obtain information and to seize things. In this instance, we had collaboration from TikTok. We conducted interviews, we conducted site visits, and so there were no obstacles to our ability to do the investigation. And the other challenge that can happen if there isn't an operation in Canada is if you need to enforce it internationally when there's a refusal to follow recommendations. So on again, in this instance, there has been an agreement to follow the recommendations.
Just as a follow-up, you were talking about the improvements that you're going to see from TikTok and that you're happy to see that. I was wondering how concerned you are about children wanting to access this no matter what safeguards are put in place. What is your message to parents out there about no matter what you are doing and you're asking TikTok to do to prevent kids from accessing the website and the app, that they may want to access it no matter what and willfully give over their information, even though it is not, lawful to be done.
Thank you for the question. And in my statement, I said we need to put the best interest of the child for first and foremost. So it's not simply on TikTok. It's on all of us as a society. So we're doing our part as regulators to make this report, make it public, highlight the concerns, inform Canadians and parents about what are the types of information that are being used and collected and used to send ads back at you and to guess things about you, including your spending power, including your gender, your sexual orientation, all of those things. So that awareness piece is important. The awareness piece is important for parents, for kids. I think it's important to have those discussions about what is really the cost of these systems that appear to be free. They're not free because you're giving your personal information. And in the age of AI, that's more and more powerful. It could use to detect more and more things about you. So that awareness piece, very important. I think with my colleagues, we issued a resolution on protecting young persons' privacy. We called on educators to do more on that. I'd love to see this to be mandatory school curricula for all kids to understand this better. But industry has a leadership role to play, and making it more user-friendly, making it more robust is a big part of it. And this is what this case is about.
I would like to add to that as well, please. So thank you, Philippe. You've raised some really important points, and I did talk about the resolution work that we have done as commissioners across the country over the years. What I think the importance of an investigation like this does is it gives us all the ability to understand what's really going on under the hood in an organization like TikTok in terms of the collecting of the information. So we, as regulators ourselves, learned through this investigation what in fact is happening. And then by sharing that information with the public, it arms them with more information that they can use to understand things better. So you asked about the kids who want to be on TikTok. Well, of course they do. What's important is that parents understand what the risks are and have those conversations with their children and try and encourage them to stay off the platform and at least to understand what the risks are associated with it. So I do think our investigation did reveal some of these activities and helps us to use that information to better inform the public.
Thank you. Commissioner McLeod, I just want to jump in here as well. We very strongly agree. On our website, parents and guardians can find a simple one-page sheet that we've prepared that can help act as a resource for them to have conversations with the children that live in their homes about what forms or how they act online and how they interact with social media when it's appropriate, and why it is better for them not to be on social media platforms before they're a certain age. We realize that all children are different and mature at different ages, and that really it's best that those conversations really happen around the dinner table, and we that's why we prepared this resource to help support parents and guardians in having those conversations. But that said, I do want to echo the point that Commissioner Dufresne made at the outset, that this can't be on the shoulders of parents and guardians alone. It takes all of us. It takes families, it takes regulators, it takes governments, and it takes corporations. We really need to make sure that the society we build is one that has the best interests of children and youth at its core, and we use that as our touchstone. So while those dinner table conversations are really critical, it really takes all of us. We can't be putting the responsibility on them alone.
Thank you. And next we will move to Antoine Trépanier from National Post.
Thank you. La presse maintenant, mais merci. C'est OK. J'ai une question par rapport. Qu'est-ce que vous diriez au niveau de la gravité de ce que vous avez découvert dans votre enquête? Qu'est-ce que vous diriez aux parents? Puis je fais un peu de pouce à ce que mon collègue vous a demandé, mais les parents vont vous voir aujourd'hui, vont regarder peut-être le rapport, ils vont être inquiets, ils vont se demander, bon, mais qu'est-ce que je dois faire? Qu'est-ce que vous leur dites exactement aux parents? Et est-ce que c'est dangereux, TikTok, au fond, pour leurs enfants?
Bien, ce que je dis aux parents, c'est il faut avoir des conversations avec les enfants. Il faut voir qu'est-ce qui est fait ici. Nous, on a trouvé, puis on en parle dans le rapport, des rapports de l'Assemblée mondiale de la vie privée, des rapports de l'UNICEF qui parlent des impacts négatifs sur les enfants 13 ans et moins certainement, d'avoir accès à certains médias sociaux, d'avoir de la publicité ciblée. Alors, spécifiquement, on parle du fait de mettre de l'avant des jeux vidéo qui peuvent essentiellement faciliter de faire des jeux de hasard, de gambling, tout ça. On parle de risque de vol d'identité avec des profils qui peuvent être créés avec nous. On parle des problèmes de développement des enfants, l'exploration de l'identité, l'image de soi, l'image corporelle, tout ça, la sexualisation précoce et les stéréotypes, la discrimination. Donc, il y a des enjeux qui viennent de ça. Ce n'est pas unique à TikTok, mais ce qu'on a vu, c'est que c'est une plateforme où il y a beaucoup d'enfants, de jeunes enfants. Et donc, l'importance ici, c'est de s'assurer qu'on empêche l'accès à ces enfants-là de moins de 13 ans pour éviter ces préjudices-là. Et aux parents, encore une fois, d'être conscients de ça. Des fois on n'est pas assez conscient du fait qu'il y a des impacts quand on partage notre vie privée.
Est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral peut faire quelque chose pour prévenir ça? Est-ce qu'il y a des ressorts au niveau fédéral ou encore dans les provinces?
Bien, je pense que ce qui est fait au niveau fédéral, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, on vient de déclarer que c'est un enjeu juridique. On est en train de déclarer que la loi fédérale et les lois provinciales, et c'est ça la force de notre enquête conjointe ici, parce que c'est vraiment pan-canadien, que ça viole la loi, de ne pas mettre assez de mesures pour empêcher les enfants d'avoir accès à des sites qui ont un impact comme ça. Ça viole aussi la loi de ne pas le rendre assez clair, quels sont les impacts. Alors là, ça s'adresse à TikTok, mais ça s'adresse à toutes les organisations qui auraient un modèle semblable. Et on fait écho de ça aussi même au niveau international, parce qu'on parle avec les collègues internationaux et on voit de plus en plus cette tendance-là de dire il faut faire plus pour protéger les jeunes en ligne.
And I think we'll just have time for our one last journalist in the room. That's Chris Nardi with National Post for Real this time.
Your report talks about the use of biometric information. I thought that was particularly interesting via facial and voice analytics. Can you detail, again, I was reading this while you were speaking, it's the pitfalls of not getting these under embargo, but my understanding is that your office found that when users upload videos, there's technology that analyzes faces to produce a data range, an age range to then determine basically broadly how old they are and then feed them customized information. Is that correct? Or is it also even taking pictures of users that don't upload videos to figure that out? What biometric?
Well, we found that there was all sorts of age estimates that were being made through technology to categorize videos for recommendations for targeting, and that used biometric information that elevated the consent that had to be obtained and the information that had to be shared. And what we saw also is the contrast between the fact that these more advanced techniques were used to estimate age for marketing purposes, for business purposes, but they were not being used to age gate. They were not being used to prevent access from the site. So that was one of the key points to say, you're using this innovation, these tools for certain purposes. You should at least be using them for the other purposes of protecting children, and to do that in a commensurate way. And so again, the organization was open to that and looked at various tools. The most basic one is asking what your age is, and you say it, but that's easy to circumvent. The next one is to see what type of content you're using, what you're looking at, and then. But we found, what about certain kids who would just not really post things and so on? So it's just exploring all of those tools, and if there's biometric information, to be very transparent about it, very clear about it, and very proportionate.
It does appear in the report that they were using this, but you seem very clear about the fact that people are not aware. You say users signing up for TikTok would have no reason to expect that TikTok would conduct an analysis of their facial features and for which purposes. You seem also deeply uncomfortable with the fact that they're doing it fundamentally in the first place without really disclosing that, right?
Well, it's the awareness. So the issue of the reasonable expectation of individuals is a key part of privacy law, especially in the context of sensitive information and biometrics. So people need to have a better understanding what's going on, what type of sensitive data is being used, so they can decide: are you comfortable doing this? Are you comfortable that this is being shared for that purpose? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. There's certain things people consent to. But there's certain things that we find just goes too far, and that's the issue of under 13 children. We just found that for that, even with consent, we find that that's not appropriate, and that policy has to be enforced, and the tools have to be made meaningful and effective.
I think we were certainly struck by exactly how elaborate the profiling that was being used by TikTok in their systems were. Exactly what information was being collected with these facial and voice analytics, and how it was being used in combination with things like geolocation information to create elaborate inferences about who the users were, about things like what their spending power was, and to use that to then decide what content, including advertising, to feed back to them. As Commissioner Dufresne has said, obviously that's super sensitive when it comes to children and youth, but we don't think that even adults had a reasonable expectation that this was happening. In our society, people have the ability to make choices when they're adults, but they can't make those choices if they don't have that information presented to them in a transparent and reasonable way. People in Canada need to be aware of exactly what social media is about. And the people that can't make those informed choices, like children under 13, should be protected from having to make those choices and having to try to figure out what is being inferred about them.
And I think we're out of time for questions, so that concludes today's press conference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.